Hello.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. We can see.
My slide is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Then let's proceed then. Okay. Today we'll discuss about. Okay, okay. Uh, so you can see the slide and audible. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then. Okay. Let's start with orthopedic trauma. Okay. Before proceeding on the particular topic, let us discuss about how to manage a trauma. Okay. Basically, a patient with any incidence of trauma, whether it is fall from height, or vehicle road traffic accident, what we have to do is nothing else but primary assessment of the patient rapidly. If it is a significant trauma, say motor vehicle accident or high speed trauma, then we should evaluate the patient just like your surgical traumatic cases like A, B, C, D, E. Okay, and assess the vitals, and then do a quick survey, and then only after that we should look for any radiological evidence to check out the which particular part of the body is affected, fracture pattern, and then proceed to treatment. This is basic management for every fracture. So prior doing anything, we have to ensure the right treatment to any patient. What is right treatment? R for rest, I for immobilization or ice compression, C for compression, and E for elevation of the limb. Okay, this is for any fracture management. Okay, whether it is lower leg, upper leg, phalanx fracture, any fracture, we should stick to the protocol of RISE. Now start with our topic, Colles fracture. Okay, it is the most common fracture in OPD practices. Basically, it is distal radius metaphyseal fracture, approximate 2 centimeter distal to the articular surface. Now, mechanism of injury is all on hyperextended or radially deviated wrist, basically all on outstretched hand. Now, classification, you need not go into the detail of classification of any fracture. Remind that in classification, there are two types of classification mainly exist. One is by classification by name. Or suppose distal radius fracture, there are two well-known classification, Friedman or Fernandez classification. Another is AO group of classification. Okay. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So see the X-ray. Okay, basically distal radius fracture. You can see from this X-ray, it is approximately 2 centimeter distal to the wrist joint. Okay. Now, when we are discussing about distal and proximal, then we should always consider the towards the trunk is proximal and away from body is distal. Hold on a minute. Okay. Uh, Presentation is visible, I think. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So whenever we are speaking about any displacement or anything, then we should consider in relation to the part towards the torso or towards the central part of the body in relation to that. So whenever we are, suppose in this particular case, whenever we are commenting upon the displacement of the fracture, it will be in relation to the proximal part. Proximal part is consist of the radius shaft, and distal part consists of the articular part of the distal radius with part of metaphysis and the carpal bones and carpus, that is hand. Got my point? Now next is Smith fracture. Now Smith fracture is just the opposite of the Colles fracture. Now you have to assess that both are these are distal radius fracture, but the angulation and the tilt are different. For Colles fracture, usually there is dorsal tilt, radial tilt, dorsal angulation, radial angulation, supination, and impaction. Above all these features, you can all this assess in X-ray except supination. Okay. Impaction means that is the collapse of the fracture particle, or you can assess indirectly by measuring the limb length, that is be shortened when there is any impaction. Now usually Colles fracture present with dinner fork deformity, whereas Smith fracture garden spade. Dinner fork মানে বেসিক্যালি যেটা খাওয়ার সময় চামচ ইউজ করা, গার্ডেন স্পেড দ্যাট ইজ বেলচা। So management will come later. Now other types of fracture in distal radius, there is one thing is button fracture. Button fractures are basically due to the shearing forces and they are very unstable. Where the Colles and Smith are very stable fracture if it is reduced. Button fracture usually do not remain in reduced position because the force underlying them. So usually button may be two types, tarsal button or volar button. The Schoffer fracture. Okay, see this X-ray. Basically, this is the distal part of the radius is sheared. Okay, and along with the carpus moves either volarly or dorsally. Now, thing is that if you see the AP view, you cannot delineate that, but in lateral view, you will see the carpal bone along with the volar limb will be displaced volarly. Our carpal bone along with the dorsal rim of the fracture will displace dorsally. So, in
Excuse me, sir.
okay, pardon please.
Sir, yes, sir. Some people are trying to join the meeting but cannot. Can you please
Okay.
allow them?
Okay. 1 minute, hold on. Okay, another thing is the Schoffer fracture. See the avulsion of the distal end of the radial styloid process. So these are all basically varieties of distal radius fracture. Now, most of the distal radius fractures are managed by already mentioned. Okay. Now, whenever we are talking about the management is consist of two things. One is confirmation of the diagnosis. Again, someone. Okay, management is confirmation of the diagnosis by radiological means or investigation. For orthopedic cases, we usually radiological evidence is sufficient for confirmation of the diagnosis. X-ray, one mode of radiology. Another modes of radiology is CT scan, MRI, bone scan. Apart from this, blood investigations, that is hemoglobin, TCD/CSR, all these things could be done. Then, after once you confirm the diagnosis, you have to do treatment. Now, in treatment part, there comes three part. One is counseling regarding the prognosis of the disease. Another is medical management. Another is surgical management. Now, in usually medical management is NSAIDs and antacids. Along with that, there will be some stintage or crepe bandage, ice compression, immobilization, and definitive management. Definitive management may be plaster immobilization or maybe operative. Operative treatment, that may be plate screw or percutaneous pinning. Now, again, Colles fracture is mostly treated by below elbow cast for 6 weeks. When we consider the dorsal button or volar button, what already have been mentioned as unstable fracture, they require locking plate fixation or non-locking plate fixation. For distal radius fracture, for early mobilization, close pinning or percutaneous pinning can be done. But button fracture, you always should remember that it should be treated by plate fixation. There is no role of plaster immobilization or K-wire fixation. Now, complications. Now, there is a fallacy in this slide. Whenever you
Sir?
talk about বলো
স্যার বলছি বাটন ফ্র্যাকচার
বলো
আর
বলো
স্যার বলছি বাটন আর সফার ফ্র্যাকচার দুটোতেই তো ডিস্টাল আর্টিকুলার সারফেস অফ
Okay,
রেডিয়াসটা
okay.
ইনভলভ
One,
আছে।
one minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Hold on. Let me finish the topic. I'll give some time to ask the question, and you ask question. Okay, all of you.
ওকে স্যার।
Okay. Whenever you are talking about complication, we should utter the most common complication. Now, when we think about most common complication is the stiffness of the joint. Okay, for distal radius fracture. Then malunion, non-union almost never exists, though sometimes occur. Median nerve injury, very rare complication. Rupture of the EPL, that is extensor pollicis longus, usually occur when we hyperflex or hyperpalmar-flex the wrist in plaster. Carpal instability, very rare again, may occur only in associated injuries such as perilunate injury or scaphoid fracture associated with distal radius fracture. Okay, now somebody is asking about is one question, button fracture. Please ask the question.
Sir, in button fracture and Schoffer's fracture, both involves the distal articular surface of radius. So how can we differentiate between the two?
No, button fracture does not. The dorsal button will involve the distal articular cartilage along with the distal costal rim. Schoffer fracture is basically radial styloid fracture. Okay, if you configure the attachment, basically it is a avulsion type of fracture. Ligaments attached with the radial styloid will avulse along with a small piece of bony chunk, that is Schoffer fracture. But button fracture, by button we means a shearing force will occur that will intraarticularly partly take the chunk or slice the dorsal or volar articular part of the distal radius along with the carpal and metacarpal. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now next is both bone forearm fracture. Now
Sir,
again,
can you let the boy? Some boys are waiting for the permission
okay,
to.
that is a big issue. I should allow you to host this conference. Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Any more? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, am I audible again? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Whenever, okay. So all of you joined again. Okay, let's continue. Okay, whenever we are talking again fracture or anything, first start with definition, then the anatomy, then the mechanism of injury, then confirmation of the diagnosis by means of X-ray, then classification of the fracture. Classification of fracture may be two types as mentioned as someone's name. For example, distal radius fracture by Frickman or Fernandez and AOTA classification. After classification, you should also consider whether it is a pediatric fracture or an adult fracture. Now, how can you differentiate whether any fracture is of pediatric or adult? You from history you will definitely know. From X-ray, you will also see the viable physis. Just look at the X-ray, see the articular cartilage, there is viable physis open. Okay. Can you see the viable physis here? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is by identifying the viable physis in the X-ray, you can ascertain this is a pediatric X-ray of the skeletally immature patient. So both bone fracture again, it is maybe in fall in outstretched hand or maybe direct trauma. Also, shaft ulna isolated fracture is known as knife stick fracture or lucky fracture. Usually occur when policeman or anybody hit with stick and someone tried to resist or avoid trauma by putting arm by the side. So direct impact on the ulna cause the knife stick or latte fracture. Again, treatment option. First is the management will be same. Confirmation of the diagnosis. Now X-ray. X-ray will be full length forearm epilateral view with wrist and elbow joint. Now I want to teach all of you two basic things. Whenever you prescribe a X-ray, X-ray should consist one joint proxima, one joint distal. For both bone forearm fracture, the proximal joint is elbow, distal joint is wrist. So you should incorporate full length forearm along with elbow and wrist. And X-ray, two joints and two view. One should have always two view. One is AP and lateral. AP lateral is most commonly sought for, but there are certain special view. Say for example, whenever we write a hand X-ray, there is two view AP and oblique. Okay. Now treatment again, maybe conserve. First is you have to counseling that this patient sustained fracture, will treat by either conservative method or operative method. Drawback of conservative method and drawback of operative method. Medical management remains same almost in all our cases. That is ties again, raise to the affected limb, immobilization, compression, elevation. Then analgesic antacids, ice compression, crepe bandage for initial management. Then whenever you pediatric both bone fracture can be managed conservatively by above elbow plaster. Now whenever you write down a plaster immobilization, then think that what should be the extent of the plaster. Now plaster again incorporates the for immobilization. So whenever I am trying to immobilize a bone, I have to mobilize the joint proximal and joint distal to the bone. That will be the principle of plaster immobilization. Now whenever joint proximal, joint distal is movement is prevented by plaster immobilization, then basically there is very minimal amount of movement. Movement we have usually movement in joint and also movement in fracture. Okay, that is the pathological. Movement in joint in physiological. So we have to prevent the movement of the fracture site and movement of the joint to stabilize the bone. So suppose in forearm fracture we have to put a above elbow plaster immobilization, that is from knuckle to the shoulder. For shaft tibia we have to immobilize joint proximal, joint distal. For tibia, the joint proximal is knee joint distal is ankle joint. We have to immobilize ankle as well as knee joint. The extent of the plaster should be above knee, where knee joint movement will be prevented, and up to the toe for prevention of the movement of the ankle joint. So this is the basic principle of any plaster application. You should incorporate the joint proximal and joint distal to the affected bone. Now regarding complication of any fracture can be divided into two categories for you. That is early complication and late complication. Early complication may be three types. One is vascular injury, one is soft tissue injury, one is nerve tissue injury. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically three early complications, that is soft tissue injury, vascular neurovascular injury, and another is compartment or acute ischemic injury. And late complications will be again your non-union, malunion, stiffness, infection for open fracture, compartment syndrome, these things particularly. So if you classify in any trauma, then there will be chances of non-union, malunion. If operative intervention occur, then infection is, if open fracture, then infection. Okay, along with stiffness of the joint. Now, there are two particular variants of the forearm fracture. One is known as Monteggia, another is Galegia. Okay. Now, Monteggia basically a proximal ulnar fracture. Forget about this mnemonic. You just consider M for Monteggia, M for medial. Okay. So, in forearm, in anatomical position, that is supination of the forearm and elbow in extension, medial bone is the ulna. So Monteggia is basically a proximal ulnar fracture along with dislocation with radial head. Now you should remember this classification because it will be oftenly asked question in your theory paper. This is Bedo classification, 4 type: anterior dislocation, posterior dislocation, lateral dislocation, fracture dislocation of radial head. Don't need to consider Monteggia variant. Galegia, just the opposite of the Monteggia. Monteggia is the M for M, medial bone. Galegia, lateral bone, that is radius. Monteggia is proximal ulna. Galegia is the distal radius. Monteggia is the dislocation of the radial head. Galegia is the dislocation of the distal radioulnar joint. Monteggia, this radius. Got it? So again, treatment is maybe conservative, plaster immobilization, maybe operative, fixation by tensional or plating. Okay, see the X-ray. There are example of both Monteggia, Galegia, and the both bone fracture. The X-ray on the left side, if you watch carefully, there is fracture of the proximal shaft ulna along with dislocation of the radial head anteriorly. So basically, this X-ray is Bedo type 1 fracture, and the X-ray just beneath the Galegia column shows the fracture of the distal shaft radius along with dislocation of the ulnar head. That is the dislocation of the distal radioulnar joint. Another is elbow dislocation. Now, whenever you entity the trauma around the elbow, consider this that anatomy of the elbow joint consists of the growth of particular ossification center. What are these? These are medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, trochlea, capitulum, and olecranon. Basically, 6 ossification centers form the elbow joint after growing this. So common mnemonic is CRITOE, C-R-I-T-O-E. C for capitellum, R for radial head, I for inward, that is your medial epicondyle, T for trochlea, O for outward, that is your lateral epicondyle, and O for your olecranon process, and E for outward, that is your lateral epicondyle. So you need not to go into detail, but you will find in any textbook or in suppose whether you read Kaushik Banerjee or not, this mnemonic will be there, and this ossification center and their age is according to this. Usually they start growing from 0 and fuse around 12 years. So common dictum is that if you can remember this mnemonic CRITOE, C-R-I-T-O-E, and add 2 years to each of them, then 6 into 2 will become 12, and it will approximate from the age of their ossification. For example, capitulum will ossify within the 2 year of age. You will see X-ray capitulum in a 2-year-old child, but you will not see the olecranon process in a 2-year child. Got my point? Hello?
স্যার নিমোনিকটা আরেকবার বলবেন?
CRITOE, CRITOE. C for capitellum, R for radial head, I for inward, that is your medial epicondyle, E for trochlea, O for olecranon process, E for lateral epicondyle. Okay, so again, for better understanding, these 6 centers ossify at the age of 12 years. So you will get the adult X-ray form in a 12-year-old child. Now, in a 2-year child, you will find the fusion of the capitellum. Then R, that is radial head. Fusion of the radial head with the shaft will occur in a 4-year-old child. Then I for inward, that is medial epicondyle. In a 6-year-old child, you will see the fusion of capitulum along with the distal humerus, fusion of the radial head along with the radial shaft, fusion of the medial epicondyle along with the humerus. You add another 2, then trochlea will be completed in a 8-year-old child. But lateral epiphysis will be viable, and you will see a gap between lateral epicondyle and the distal humerus will be obliterated at the last, that is 12 years of age. So as the child grows from age, the ossification centers will be ossified. So this area goes into continuous bony evaluation. For this, according to age, elbow injury vary. For example, children between 0 to 5-6 years, supracondylar fracture is most common. After 6 years, incidence of supracondylar fracture usually diminishes. Then occurs this elbow dislocation. After 10 to 12 years, when all the physes are formed, elbow dislocation chances reduce, and there will be intraarticular fracture. So elbow dislocation is basic. Whenever we talk about any dislocation, basically there is no bony fracture. Disruption of the joint capsule and the tendinous attachment of the various and the ligaments are disrupted and bone joint is dislocated in non-anatomical position. So it will be very painful. There will be limitation of joint movement and there will be swelling. So these are basically clinical features. Whenever you consider any dislocation, clinical feature or any fracture, there will be tenderness, there will be swelling, there will be features of acute inflammation. All these 5 things, okay? Pain, what are these? Pain, tenderness, pain, then redness, then swelling. Regarding elbow dislocation, most common is posterior dislocation. Other types are anterior dislocation, lateral is the rarest variety. Again, treatment is the same. You confirm by diagnosis by X-ray. See the X-ray, you will see there is no bony fracture visible, but trochlear groove is well displaced and ulna goes distally. So treatment is for any dislocation is the reduction of the joint under anesthesia and then plaster immobilization. If under anesthesia close reduction could not be possible for any dislocation, then open reduction should be done. Remember, any dislocation is an emergency. Okay, whether it is of dislocation of the PIP joint, it is of dislocation of the elbow joint, hip joint, any dislocation is emergency. Unless you reduce the dislocation, not only it will be painful, if you delay, the articular cartilage will get damaged, and once articular cartilage get damaged, you can never replace it. It is not required. So complication again, complication is the stiffness. Acute complication may be neurovascular injury, vascular injury, compartment syndrome. And there may be stiffness, and opposite of the stiffness, there may be instability. Okay. And heterotrophic bone formation can also occur when there is excessive massage or excessive manipulation or manhandling of the soft tissue during operation. Now, this is a very common fracture, olecranon fracture, very commonly seen. Now, whenever you consider these two type of fracture, that is olecranon fracture and patella fracture, basically these two fractures are very similar because these two fractures are, or rather these two bones are eccentrically loaded bone. Now, what is eccentrically loaded? That is one tendon pulls upon this bone. Example, for patella, there is quadriceps, and for olecranon, there is triceps. So treatment options are also same for these two fractures, that is tension bend or vary. For any eccentrically loaded bone, you have to do tension band vary. That is the treatment option. So again, so olecranon fracture, what is the mechanism of injury? Mechanism of injury may be direct or indirect. Direct means suppose you put a hammer and blow it directly over olecranon. What will happen? Olecranon will be shattered. Okay. So there will be gross communication. Indirect, fall in outstretched hand. Direct, fall upon elbow. Okay. So this pure transverse type of fracture usually indicate indirect injury. See, the fracture line is straight. There is no significant communication. So it indicates indirect injury or lesser trauma. More violent force or direct injury will produce significant comminution. There will be small chunk of pieces of bone within the fracture margin. Treatment will be same. Treatment will be done by TBW. You did not to go into these classifications for olecranon fracture. Remember only the classification of the Montesia. Treatment is tension band varying. Now lateral condyle fracture. See, it is also a usually common in pediatric population. Treatment for lateral condyle fracture may be conservative, such as in these cases where displacement is minimal. But whenever there is displacement, it should be fixed. Even if not is there is no significant displacement, lateral condyle is treated usually operatively because it is an intra-articular fracture. Now you clarify these two concepts. Fracture may be extra-articular, fracture may be intra-articular. Okay. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Audible, am I?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because okay, fracture may be intra-articular, fracture may be extra-articular. So what do you mean by intra-articular and what do you mean by extra-articular fracture? Intra-articular fracture usually involves the part of articular cartilage. Extra-articular, that is no involvement of articular cartilage. Now, why these two things are very important? Any intra-articular fracture, there will be significant stiffness because there is damage to the articular cartilage. Whereas extra-articular fracture usually heals well and no significant morbidity to the patient. And also you need to do a very good reduction for intra-articular fracture because unless there is smooth or well anatomical reconstruction could not be achieved, then there will be friction of the articular cartilage against that irreduced part. So it will be painful. So lateral condyle fracture, again, pediatric people, most common. Treatment by degree of articular displacement. If there is minimal displacement, close reduction will be preferred. More displacement, open reduction is preferred. Classification, remember only Milch classification. Milch classification is basically type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is a stable variety and type 2 unstable. Remember, try to remember these two things. Okay, Milch 1, Milch 2. 2 is bad. Again, complications will be non-union is very common in lateral condyle, malunion rarely, and all these complications already mentioned. Okay, vascular complications usually occur in supracondylar fracture, but not this lateral condyle fracture. Now, clavicle fracture usually very common in pediatric as in adult population. Now, adult usually what happens, see the X-ray on your left side screen, the junction between medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 is in stress. So it is the most common site of clavicle fracture. Again, all in outstretched hand. What is the treatment option? Arm pouch, figure of 8 bandage. Mostly treated by conservative method, that is immobilization for 3 weeks in figure of 8 bandage. Operative treatment can be done. Complication will be same. Shoulder dislocation, you remember this slide only. Shoulder dislocation is of 3 types: anterior, most common, posterior, and inferior. Inferior is the least common. Now treatment, again, you have to do the X-ray, then confirm the diagnosis, then reduce the shoulder by sudden maneuvers under anesthesia, relocate, immobilize by shoulder strapping or immobilizer. Now what happens? Posterior dislocation is very difficult to diagnose and often missed. See this X-ray? This seems very normal or very common. But what will happen if you see the clinical scenario with the patient will be unable to lift the shoulder? There are certain signs known as Dugas sign. What is or Hamilton caliper sign? You have to read the textbook. Dugas sign is basically nothing but one is able to move his hand to his opposite shoulder. Then it will be Dugas sign negative. If he cannot do, then Dugas sign positive. My video is visible. Hello?
Yes.
1 minute. Stop sharing. So you can see me now, okay? See, if my hand comes to my shoulder, then it is Dugas sign negative. A patient with shoulder dislocation will never able to move his hand to his opposite shoulder. Okay, there will be loss of contour of the deltoid. Okay. Now voice is not breaking.
Sir, ठीक है sir.
Okay. So one will be able to move the hand to the opposite shoulder freely. Okay. And the contour of the deltoid, you have a very nice contour. This deltoid is this shape. Okay. This contour is well maintained. Then one can think the shoulder is all right. Okay. But let's go to screen sharing again. So in posterior dislocation, you will see patient will unable to do these things, but X-ray will appear in normal position. See, the humerus head is radiolucent here. Okay. If you consider the consistency or opacity of the shaft of the humerus with the humeral head, it will see the humerus head is much more radiolucent compared to the glenoid or the shaft of the humerus. That is known as light bulb sign. Suppose the bulb is switched on, okay, giving light. Humeral head is the bulb. So it is typical of posterior dislocation. Inferior dislocation rare. Remember these two things, that epileptic and electric shock patients, convulsion and the electric shock will produce this type of dislocation. It is very difficult to reduce without anesthesia. Treatment.
Sir, can you please repeat the bulb sign?
Okay, again. You can see the slide. Okay. Slide is visible. Posterior dislocation. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you consider the consistency of the humeral head along with the glenoid, can you demarcate the consistency?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Ye-
Yes, sir.
Can you demarcate the consistency, difference in consistency of these two things?
Yes, sir. We can
The
demarcate.
Okay. This is basically, so humeral head appears to be a bulb-like structure. Okay.
Okay, sir.
That is known as bulb sign. So treatment is close reduction, certain maneuvers already mentioned, Mills, Fokker, Simpson, or Hippocratic. These are the techniques by which we reduce. And after reduction, you should always check something. That is, rather than prior any dislocation, you should check pulse and nerve function. Rather, any injury, you should check distal pulse and nerve function and record it. And after treatment, you should also record it whether any difference occurs, because a fractional injury may give rise to axillary nerve injury. Operative treatment is rarely done, okay, for shoulder dislocation. If it is acute, for chronic dislocation, there may be, or delayed dislocation or neglected shoulder dislocation, one have to go for, or any neglected dislocation, one have to go for operative treatment. Now, these are for some MCQ purposes. These are not commonly asked. One is Bankert lesion, one is Hill-Shack lesion, and another is reverse Hill-Shack lesion. Hagel lesion is not that important. Now, Bankert lesion is nothing but anteroinferior labrum will be torn off. Now, if anteroinferior part of glenoid is fractured, this is known as bony Bankert. It anteroinferior labrum that can be only seen in an MRI picture, known as Bankert lesion. Hill-Shack is the opposite. That is, posterolateral part humeral head will be partly gone. Now, coming to again proximal humerus fracture. Proximal humerus fracture may be part of greater tuberosity fracture, may be lesser tuberosity fracture, head fracture, neck fracture, or this combination of all these. These are classified as proximal humerus fracture. So usually treatment is conservative unless angulation is more than 45 degrees or displacement is more than 1 centimeter. That is the Neil's classification, and these are Neil criteria for treatment. You may remember it better, not remember it, that also will be done. Treatment will be same for all these things for you guys, okay? Conservative, plaster immobilization should incorporate 2 joints. Can you please name the, in this fracture, what 2 joints to be mobilized? Or rather, what is the proximal joint to this fracture? What is the distal joint to this fracture for proximal humerus? Hello?
So shoulder and elbow joint.
Shoulder and elbow. So whenever you have to apply plaster for this fracture, you have to immobilize shoulder and elbow. So basically, spica type of casting or shoulder spica cast is done. Shaft humerus, again, nothing different from other things. It may be, so now again, another thing is important, the fracture pattern. Now, whenever you consider the fracture, there may be 4 types of fracture in any long bone. As the X-ray shows, it is basically a long oblique or spiral fracture. Other variants may be a pure transverse fracture. Another is long. This is long oblique. Another may be short oblique. Another is a grossly comminuted variety of fracture. I think I have slides later on to show you this type of fracture. Treatment will be conservative by plaster immobilization, operative, open reduction, internal fixation by plating or nailing. Complications will be again early, late, and remember, whenever you consider operative treatment, there is always scope of iatrogenic complications. Most common complication of operative treatment will be infection, stiffness, these 2 things.
Sir,
Okay. anytime you operate, there is always chance of infection, there is always chance for deepness. This is a very important point. Can you hear me?
স্যার আপনার আওয়াজটা আটকে যাচ্ছে স্যার।
এবার আসছে না এখনো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে এবার।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে।
ওই প্রেজেন্টেশন অন করার সময় যখন করছেন তখন স্যার আওয়াজটা আটকে আটকে আসছে স্যার।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, বুঝতে পারছি। ঠিক আছে, আচ্ছা, এটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট তোমাদের জন্য। নেক ফিমার ফ্র্যাকচার, ওকে? নেক ফিমার ফ্র্যাকচার is very important. It can be come into your X-ray, short note, very oftenly asked. Okay, neck femur fracture basically, again, two type of population: pediatric neck femur, adult neck femur fracture. Pediatric neck femur fracture is an absolute emergency, should be fixed as early as possible, if possible within 6 hours. Now there is a classification known as Delbert classification for pediatric neck femur fracture. If you remember this name, that will be more than sufficient for you. Delbert classification, DELBEIT. For adults, basically two type of. One is osteoporotic, other is high velocity trauma fracture. Osteoporotic patients, that is elderly, aged more than 65 years, male, post-menopausal women. These two are compromised the osteoporotic group. The mode of injury for these people is the minimal trauma, fall in bathroom. Some of you may have seen that elderly patient of your household flipped during bathroom and may have this sort of fracture, known as also fragility fracture. In adult patients or young patients, say 30-year-old male, female, this fragility fracture will be unlikely. It can happen when a significant trauma, that is either motor road traffic accident, motor vehicle injury occurs. Now classification again is very important. Anatomic classification, this is the femoral head core classification, that is one is anatomical, that is subcapital fracture, transcervical and basicervical. Okay, basically divided according to the attachment of the capsule. It may be intracapsular neck femur, extracapsular neck femur. Extracapsular neck femur fracture is basically consists of your trochanteric fracture, and intracapsular neck femur fracture may be three types, that is subcapital, transcervical, basicervical. If you go by Powell's angle, this angle 30, 50, 70, as the angle progresses, the outcome varies. For young patient, for elderly patient, outcome will remain same. Another classification is Garden classification. You have to remember all these three classifications. You have to able to remember each and everything of this classification. That is this anatomic classification, this Powell's angle classification, 30, 50, 70, or in some books there is also 30 and 50. Whatever you may write, both are correct theoretically. Garden classification is Garden type 1 is undisplaced partial fracture. Garden type 2, complete fracture but undisplaced. Garden type 3, complete fracture, partially displaced. Garden 4, complete fracture, completely displaced. So what are the implication of this classification? This Powell and Garden, as does Garden 4 or Garden 3, has poor prognosis compared to Garden 1 and Garden 2. Similarly, Powell 3 has poor prognosis compared to Powell 1 and Powell 2. This is the algorithm of the treatment of fracture neck femur. So you need not to go by this. consider this young adult patient, you have to do osteosynthesis. That means you have to preserve the femoral head and do fixation by means of plate screw like DHS plate or cannulated cancellous screw. And for elderly patient, what you can do is sacrifice the femoral head. You can do a hemiarthroplasty or a total hip arthroplasty. Now, what is the difference between hemiarthroplasty and total hip arthroplasty? Hemiarthroplasty is the replacement of the femoral head only, and total hip arthroplasty is the replacement of the femoral head along with the replacement of the acetabulum. So, what is the advantage of hemiarthroplasty over total hip arthroplasty is that it is a less surgically tolerable. So, if a patient has a many comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, hemiarthroplasty will be better tolerated to that patient. Patient has less comorbidities, total hip arthroplasty will be tolerated to them because of total hip arthroplasty require longer learning curve for surgeon, will require more operative time, so more chance of infection, more rehabilitation. But if it is incorporated well, then outcome will be superior to a hemiarthroplasty. Osteosynthesis, that means the preservation of femoral head should always be attempted in younger patient. You cannot replace hip or younger patient because your replacement will last for 10 to 15 years for hemiarthroplasty and 20 to 25 years maximum for your total hip arthroplasty. So if a patient of 35 or 40 years, you should always try to preserve it. Now, what is the difficulty or what is the likely thing if you able to try to save this? One is that non-union. Another is avascular fixation, avascular necrosis. So, femoral head, if you consider the anatomy, the articular supply of the femoral head is mainly medial and lateral retinacular vessels. These are branches of the profunda femori artery. Another thing is from the central part along with the ligamentum fovea capitalis. These are minimal supply. Main is from throughout the neck. Profunda femori artery, profunda femoral artery, then lateral and medial branches of these two form a retinacular group of vessels, and then it pierces the capsule to form a anastomosis around the femoral neck, also known as circle of Chong, and this gives supply to the femoral head. Whenever there is an injury, then there are two chances. This blood supply will cut off. Another is tamponade effect. Fracture will within the capsule, hematoma will impede the further circulation. That is compartment-like of symptom. So blood supply will be stripped off and the femoral head will become avascular, and later osteonecrosis will occur. Non-union is very common because the shearing force of the nature of this fracture prevent union. Also, this sort of fracture is devoid of vascularity, and also the lack of the cambium layer within the periosteum of the femoral neck or head is also one is responsible. Other is it is continuously bathed by the synovial fluid. So the fracture hematoma washes out from the surface. So you have to read this thing very importantly. Neck femur fracture is radiology, is management. Management will be the same again, X-ray, counseling the patient about if it is young patient, poor outcome, chances of avascular necrosis, chances of non-union should be elaborated. Then operative medical management will be same, that is rest, immobilization, Okay, compression, elevation, antecedent, operative treatment, younger age, osteosynthesis, older age, replacement surgery. Again, shaft femur fracture. Now, all this fracture I have spoken about, there is no significant hemodynamic instability occurs in all these fractures. But this fracture, shaft femur fracture, one can lose up to 1.5 liter of blood in a single shaft femur fracture. That is roughly compromise 1/3 of the whole blood volume of a human being. Suppose a person of normal hemodynamic stability, 5 liter is considered as the total volume of that person, and a shaft femur fracture bleeding approximate 1.5 liter of blood. So this patient will be hemodynamically unstable. Once you suspect a shaft femur fracture patient, you have to do resuscitation. I always have mentioned that is ABCDE first, then general screening patient. What do you mean by general screening? Apart from any orthopedic treatment, you may have a polytrauma patient, you may have a splenic rupture, you may have a multiple rib fracture with paradoxical breathing. You may have any other significant head injury. Okay, this thing you should look for. And particularly when you thinking of shaft femur fracture, you should look for these things for this patient, because shaft femur fracture will not occur in any trivial trauma. Now again, what I have already mentioned, that it may be any long bone fracture, may be a pure transverse fracture, that is type 0. Type 1 shows that a transverse fracture with a small butterfly segment, minimal. Type 2 is a larger butterfly. Type 3 is basically a long oblique fracture with a huge butterfly. And type 2 is basically short oblique type of fracture. And type 4 is the comminution. See that multiple fragments are in between the two fracture surfaces. That is the comminution. So see, the high energy trauma, non-ambulatory pain, gross deformity, swelling, shortening. Management is always that quick resuscitation is the important. So when a patient with, you think, shaft femur, check pulse, BP, pulse will be tachycardia, blood pressure will be lowered, give him crystalloid, blood transfusion, analgesic, antacid, sting, Thomas sting for immobilization, then do X-ray. In a hemodynamically stable patient, or a portable X-ray can be done in ER. Treatment according to age. Pediatric shaft femur fracture, conservative up to 6 years. After 6 to 12 years, titanium elastic nailing system. In adult patient, treatment of choice is nowadays is interlocking intermedullary nailing. KNL can be tried, plate fixation can be tried, but rarely done nowadays. Hip dislocation, again, it is a severe variety, but patient unlikely to be hemodynamically stable. So hip dislocation, again, you have to have a significant trauma. Most common is the posterior dislocation. Other types are anterior dislocation, least common. Now, see the slide. The hip goes posteriorly and migrated upward. So there will be gross shortening of the limb. And when you consider the posterior dislocation, limb will be, attitude of the limb will be flexed and adapted.
Hello, sir.
Bolo?
Hello. Sir, how do you understand that
bolo.
it is anterior or posterior?
Now, you should have two views. I have already mentioned one for this view, you can see the superior migration. This is AP view. By lateral view, you can assess whether it is posterior or anterior. Got my point? Any X-ray, you should write AP and lateral.
Okay,
unless
sir.
until contraindicated. Okay, from AP view, it is very difficult for you, but again, if you consider hip dislocation and if you given this X-ray, you should always consider that should be posterior, as posterior is most common. It is almost 90 to 95%. And even if you can, by seeing the attitude of the limb, that is flexion, adduction, internal rotation, you can rule out whether it is posterior dislocation or anterior dislocation. See that it is mentioned that careful neurovascular evaluation. Any dislocation, you have to do careful neurovascular evaluation. Sciatic nerve praxia is very common with hip dislocation. You should always look for toe extension or toe extension of the great toe. That indicates the L5 nerve root, and whether it is preserved or not is of paramount importance. See X-ray, AP, and Judet view of the pelvis. Two views should be asked. One view is we will never make out whether it is anterior or posterior. Two view you can only give. Classification, you need not to go into classification for hip dislocation. Treatment will be same for any dislocation. That is reduction of the dislocation and immobilization. Operative treatment indicated for unstable fracture, that is associated fracture, acetabulum, or any femoral head requiring fracture fixation, or in neglected dislocation which is delayed beyond certain limit, so close reduction could not be done. Complication again, whenever hip is dislocated or fracture femoral head, there is always chance of avascular necrosis. Osteoarthritis, recurrent dislocation is very rare. Neurovascular injury can occur. Associated fracture, femoral head fracture, femoral neck fracture, acetabulum fracture can occur. Thromboembolism can occur in any significant injury, particularly in shaft femur fracture. Now, tibial shaft fracture, again, X-ray. Most common site of fracture is open fracture is tibia. Why most common? Because tibia, if you consider medial part of tibia, that is almost palpable throughout its length. Subcutaneous, no significant muscle bulk. Only one bone can be palpated like this. That is ulna. Ulna is almost subcutaneous bone. Okay. Treatment again, conservative, operative. Operative treatment for long bone, lower limb, intermedullary interlocking nail. Now again, bimalleolar fracture, trimalleolar fracture. If you go through this fracture, even if you able to write it short note, bimalleolar means medial malleolus, lateral malleolus fracture. Trimalleolar means medial malleolus, lateral malleolus, along with posterior malleolus fracture. Confirmation of the diagnosis by X-ray. Treatment will be RICE, then plaster immobilization or operative treatment. হ্যালো
স্যার বলছি যে কখন ওপেন রিডাকশন করব আর কখন ক্লোজ রিডাকশন করব এটা কিরকম করে বোঝা যায়?
Now, open reduction or close reduction, that is basically whether you apply a nail or plate. Okay, for nail fixation, you always have to should attempt a close reduction first and then open reduction. Hello.